Welcome to Living Well. We're so glad that you joined us for another segment of how to live well. One of our main purposes of this program is to really encourage people to take preventive measures to stay well. We're all on this journey together of health and wholeness. We're all on this journey together for heaven. And so today we're going to talk about nature's first aid kit in the kitchen. So we're going to look at things that you may have in your kitchen already that you can put into your first aid kit. And why do you need a first aid kit? We all know that everyone needs a first aid kit because there are going to be injuries, there's going to be emergency, there's going to be something that you're going to need to either try to heal or remedy or stop something. So thank you for joining us today. It is my joy, my pleasure. My name is Dr. Jennifer Sankey, and I'm going to share with you some things from the kitchen that you can put into your first aid kit. So let me just share with you that this program is for educational purposes only. As I mentioned, you're going to hear things that you're going to write down and maybe keep. But again, the information that I provide to you is just for your own information and to help you on your journey of health and wellness. If you have any questions, ask your physician, because we do not assess, we do not diagnose, we do not treat. But again, we do want to educate you on things that you need to know about your health and wellness. So we know that injuries are going to happen. We know that emergencies are going to happen. Some of them are going to be scrapes and bumps. Some of them are going to be more intense. You may cut your hand. You may fall on your knee. You may even have chest pain. We're going to talk about all of those things of what you need to do when those things happen. So let's talk about the injuries and everything. We want you to plan, prepare, and protect your life, whether there's a scrape, a bump, or in an emergency. Plan, prepare, and protect your life. We've heard of a lot of emergencies that have happened on the news recently in Ukraine, in Russia. We've even heard about this week in New York on the subway. We've heard about different things that are going to happen. Those are outside the home, but inside the home, there's all those things that we should do to plan and prepare and to protect our lives. So what we need to know is what items to have in your home first aid kit. May sound simple, but if we use everything out of the kit and don't replace it, then we don't have what we need when we have those scrapes and bumps and lumps and emergencies. And then we're going to talk about how do you treat those minor injuries using natural remedies. There's so many natural things that we can use instead of a pain pill. What else can we use? We'll talk about that. And then when should you actually call 911 and seek medical attention? It's more than a scrape, it's more than a bump, it's more than a burn. Then when do you need to seek medical attention? We'll talk about that. So my first question to you is, do you have a first aid kit? Do you have somewhere that you store all of your things in the event that you need it? It could be in a little bag like this shown on the screen, or it can be in a box. It could be in anything, but do you have one? If the answer is no, by the end of this presentation, I want you to say, you know what? I think this is important. I'm going to get a little box. It doesn't have to be fancy. I'm going to get a Ziploc bag. It doesn't have to be fancy, but I'm going to put something in it. So if there's an emergency, I know exactly where everything is. There used to be a time that people had something called a medicine cabinet, and people would keep it in there, but I don't know if they even use medicine cabinets anymore, because most bathrooms, they kind of discourage you from storing things anyway because of the moisture. The next question I have is, yes, say yes, you have a first aid kit, but when was the last time you checked the things that are stocked in there? We know that things do expire. So if you have any medications in there, an aspirin or Tylenol or anything, those things are going to expire. So you want to check and see whether or not those items are actually within the date range. We also know that sometimes when we have gauzes or rollers or ace bandages, we may have taken it out, used it before, and haven't restocked it. So I would say this is very important that you restock and have those things ready to go in the event of an emergency. So items for the home first aid kit. Now it may sound very simple. You may say, oh yeah, I already know this. That's great. But what I'm trying to do with this program today is to encourage all of us to make sure that we have a place and a space where we have all of these items in the event of an emergency. So gauze. We know gauze is very important because if you need to cover a lump or a bump or a scrape or burn, you can have that to place it. Or you can use it to actually to wash an area, to cleanse an area. Bandages, different sizes of Band-Aids, not just the little small ones, the itsy bitsy teeny ones, but larger ones that may need to cover a larger surface area. An ACE wrap to immobilize or to stabilize an extremity, whether it's an arm or a leg or an ankle. Those are important to have on hand. Peroxide is really good for cleaning a wound. Alcohol is going to ouch, especially if there's a scrape or bump, but it's also an antiseptic, which can clean an area in the event there's an open space. We don't want those the bacteria to get into that wound. And saline, particularly if you get something in your eye, you can flush it out using saline. So probably about maybe back in January, I had a fall. It was a hard fall and I fell really hard. And so I did not have a first aid kit. I didn't have any of these things that we're talking about today. So that was my lesson learned, that those things are very important to have. And what I injured, I didn't have any scrapes or bumps, but I injured my wrist and I did not have an ACE bandage to even support it. And so I found out I needed one. So I ended up going to the store and buying one at that time. But had I had it when the fall first occurred, I could have wrapped my wrist at that time, lightly wrapped it, put some ice on it, but I had to go actually purchase these items to have them available for me. The other thing is an ice pack. Now, many people, they think about those little ice packs, they have the little cap on them, but they make ice packs, the flat ones. You can use many things as an ice pack in your home, but the most important thing is have an ice pack in the freezer that you can reach and take out and then apply to whatever area that may have been injured, so that if there's to reduce the risk of swelling. The sooner you can put it on, the better it will be. Having a flashlight. You may say, why do I need a flashlight? It's a first aid kit. Many times if something gets in the eye, you need to look in the eye to see what is in the eye. That would be a purpose of a flashlight. We'll talk more about if there's an emergency, you can use a flashlight as well. Tweezers in case there is a bee sting or any type of splinter get into the hand or in the leg or in the foot. When I used to sew, I used to, straight pins would fall on the floor. And if you don't pick them up at that time, you may end up feeling them on your foot later when you step on them. So again, having tweezers is a good thing to have to help remove things from the skin. Scissors to cut the bandage, an ear bulb to rinse the ear out. As a child, I had ear problems, so my mom is always irrigating my ear out, but didn't have a pain reliever. And we're going to talk about some natural pain relievers today that you may want to have in your kit. So that's what should be in your kit. So when all the things I went over, how many things do you actually have in your first aid kit? I want to hear, open your mic. How many of those things do you have in your first aid kit? All of them, half of them, or none of them? I would love for you to open your mic.
Well, I have about 6 of them.
How many of them?
6.
6, okay, great. Excellent. Anyone else?
I have tweezers, scissors, pain relievers, hydrogen peroxide, alcohol.
Great. Great. So remember, we need gauze, we need a Curlex or something to put around the wound. All of those things are important, and you can get those things relatively affordable. If you go to if you have a Dollar Tree in your area or a Family Dollar or a Dollar General, you can buy those things, and you don't have to buy a whole bunch, because remember, it's just maybe 1 or 2 people in the home, but it's important to have those things available. All right, so let's talk about treating minor injuries that are non-life threatening. This is important, non-life threatening. So we're gonna go to the kitchen. How do you like that kitchen with the red going on, with the red stove, red on the microwave? Well, we wanna talk about what we may need that we can find in our kitchen for our nature's first aid kit from the kitchen. So antifungal, anti-inflammatory, dry skin, for cuts, you can use coconut oil. Now, many of us have coconut oil, but we may use it for cooking or for a salad dressing, or we may use it for something else, but it also can be used on the skin for all of those reasons that I just spoke about. And what's interesting, when I was doing this research, as an anti-inflammatory. That is so good to know. And an antifungal, very good to know, because you can use coconut oil on your face, on your skin, for dryness, but to know that it has other properties is really important. Also for diarrhea, fenugreek, you may have heard that. I think that Edna talked about that. Ms. Sankey talked about that a couple of months back when we had, but you can buy this, especially if you're having upset stomach, having difficulty. Of course, things like oatmeal and applesauce, those things can help too. But if you need to get it under control, fenugreek, I can't really say well, is also another thing that you can use. Let's say you're having a difficult time healing a wound. My mom had a wound on her lower extremity because she had poor circulation in her legs. And when they came and did an assessment, they ordered, they call it Medi honey, but it is honey, literally honey that you put on the wound 2 to 3 times a day to help with healing. It heals, it has healing properties. Cabbage leaves, if you use the outside of the cabbage leaf, you know how you pull it off before you start cutting it up to prepare it to cook. If you use those leaves, lightly steam them, put them on the wound, wrap them with the gauze, the roller gauze that we talked about, that can actually help with wound healing. Again, you do it over a period of time. Nothing's immediate, but if you do it consistently, you will see healing.
Dr. Sankey,
Yes.
you can also use the honey and egg white, especially for bed sores. It was used when I was back home in the hospital to help close up that gaping hole in the bed sores. So egg white can also be used with the honey for that purpose.
Wow, thank you. I did not know that. Did anyone else know that? That's good news, because when we were trying to heal my mom's lower leg and we started everything else, but that would have been another, because egg whites have the proteins in them. If you put it directly on the affected area, it's going right through this to the place. It's not going through the mouth, then digestive system, is going directly on the wound. So honey and egg whites, and then cabbage leaves are ways to heal a wound, help with wound healing. If you have cataracts or gallstones, lemon is good for that. Now I can tell you, one of my friends told me the story about a friend of theirs who had cataracts, and they put lemon juice in their eyes, and over time it really cleared up the cataracts. I'm not a doctor, medical doctor, or a naturopath, so I'm just telling you what was told to me and the effects and how it came out. I'm not suggesting one way or the other. My guess is it probably really does burn to go in the eye, because lemon by itself in the mouth is pretty tart unless you kind of water it down. But I have also heard about gallstones, that if you do lemon water, it will help to dilute or to help to resolve gallstones. Now, this is another story from a friend. Her daughter had gallstones. They were going to do a cholecystectomy, take out the gallbladder. And she said, no, don't let them touch your gallbladder. You need your gallbladder. Let's try the lemon water first. And to this day, this young lady has not had to have her gallbladder taken out. So again, there's many things naturally that are found in the kitchen that we can use instead of, or as an as an option to other things. Another thing, if you get a burn or a blister, aloe. Everybody should have an aloe plant in their yard, in their house, somewhere. So if you get a burn or a blister, you go out there, pop the little leaf and just open it and rub it on it. Aloe is good for so many things, for the skin, for the scalp. It has a lot of properties, but if you put it on the skin right away, you know how if you get burned, if you put it on right away, then you can avoid your skin blistering. And the healing process will start right away. If you have food poisoning or indigestion, apple cider vinegar is good. Now, don't take a lot of it. You want to just do a capful and 8 ounces of water, 6 ounces of water, but you don't want to make it a habit of taking a lot of apple cider vinegar over a period of time. It can imbalance your potassium, your magnesium, and all of that. So you be very careful with it. It is good. It has a lot of properties, but sometimes, you know, we think more is better. More is not always better. And so we want to be mindful of how we apply these principles or utilize these things in our kitchen as first aid to treat any type of minor wounds. Cayenne is good for stopping bleeding and increasing blood flow. Isn't that funny? It can stop bleeding on the skin, but it also can increase blood flow. I've heard of people who have had, having chest pain, think they're having a heart attack, they do cayenne, and it helps relieve the discomfort because now there's increased blood flow in the body. But it will stop bleeding. It does burn. So you need to know that. So I have all kinds of friends that have used these remedies that have shared with me. One friend was saying he's bald, so he was cutting his hair, kind of shaving it off, and nicked his ear, started bleeding, put a gauze to it, tissue to it, holding it, took it off, and it started bleeding again, and then ended up having to put cayenne, and the cayenne stopped it from bleeding right away. So that's very good. You should have cayenne in your kitchen. That is important to have, something that you will need if you begin to have chest pain. Try cayenne and see if that'll work. If you get a bee sting or any type of poisoning, charcoal. Now, this is one thing that I don't have in my kit that I need in my kit, because you never, ever, ever know if you're going to need it. And so charcoal is good. We've heard about charcoal before. It is very good for many things, but it is good for poisoning particularly, and it's also good for bee stings. Let's talk about splinters. I don't know if you've ever had a splinter, but all of us have. I talked about tweezers. Those are great, but sometimes it's so deep, it's embedded in the skin, or if you step on glass or there's glass in your hand, anything, sometimes it's hard to work it out of the system, without picking around the good skin. If you put an onion on it, it will help draw out the glass or draw out the splinter. Another friend was telling me about, in the old days in the country, they used to put a piece of meat on it, and that would help draw it out. I don't eat meat, so I don't know. I'm just going by what I heard, but I do know that onions has been shown to help remove that, help work it to the surface so that you can remove it from the body. If you have any type of swelling, an ice pack. If you don't have an ice pack, but you have frozen vegetables in your freezer, use it as an ice pack. Remember, it's covered up anyway. So if push comes to shove and you don't have an ice pack, pull one of those bags of broccoli or Brussels sprouts or corn or whatever, put it on that space so that the healing, so it doesn't swell. The extremity doesn't swell. Heartburn, and urinary tract infection, spider bites, baking soda. Many times we think, oh, we shouldn't have baking soda, we shouldn't cook with baking soda, we shouldn't do this with baking soda, but baking soda has its purpose. You can actually put a little baking soda in water and drink it to help with heartburn. You can make a paste for spider bites and put it on the skin like a little poultice. So baking soda has, and it's very inexpensive. You can buy it for less than $1 for a box. So having it in your home as part of your first aid kit in your kitchen is it's affordable. All of these things are very affordable. Another thing, if you have a headache or have pain, you can make a potato poultice. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but as I was doing my research, I thought this is very interesting. You take some white potatoes, you boil them, you mash them up, put them in a little cloth, a thin cloth. You can put it on your head, you can put it on your neck, you can put it on anything that causes pain, and it's to draw the pain out. Horseradish poultice, same thing. You put it in a little bit of water, wrap it in a cloth, and you can put the poultice on whichever area is hurting. And it's to pull the pain out. Basil is another thing that's good for pain. And so these are things that we may have in our kitchen, we may not, but I would encourage you, these are things that are not pills, but they're something natural or nature-wise that you can use to help with treating minor injuries, right? And then you can also help other people who may be visiting in your home, with these things as well. If you have asthma, bronchitis, or hay fever, honey is really good by itself, usually with honey and lemon, but honey and thyme mixed together also are ways that you can help with opening up the passageways for if you have asthma or bronchitis or anything like that, or difficulty. There's a lot of pollen in the air right now. Their respiratory systems are being irritated. Honey and thyme is something that you can use together that could help with that. If you have ear pain, olive oil by itself is good. You drop it in, let it stand for 5 minutes, turn your head back over, let it run back out. It is to help with your ear pain, or you can mix it with lavender. We know that lavender is good for pain.
Jennifer,
Yes.
also for earache, you can take an onion and cut it in half, put it in the oven to let it get a little soft, and then put it on your ear and wrap it around your head and leave it overnight, and earache be gone in the morning.
Wow.
I did that for the kids all growing up.
So that's great. Onion, put it in the oven just to soften it. And
Yeah,
then,
cut it in half first.
oh, cut it in half. And then you put it on the ear.
Mm-hmm.
You wrap the head.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's great to know. So I'll have to add that to my list. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
One other thing that I use too is the hydrogen peroxide.
Okay.
I would just drop about 3 drops in the air. Well, I tell you from my own personal experience. When I went on my vacation in Trinidad last year, I was having an earache, but I didn't want to go to any emergency area. So the lady who I was staying by, she I tell she, I said my ears kind of hurting me and it kind of irritating my head. So she tell me she have somebody that tells she to put the thing there, the 3 drops of or how much you could think, and it literally I do that about 3 nights or whenever I feel to do it, and it clean out the ears, and the pain was gone by the time the second day.
So that's the hydrogen
The
peroxide.
hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide. So yeah, for ear.
Yeah.
And you know, it used to be a time when I flew, whenever I would fly, I would have ear pain for days. And so this is good to know. I don't have that problem anymore, but when I was younger, I used to have that. So hydrogen peroxide, 3 drops in the ear, just straight, or do you dilute it?
No, just straight.
Okay. That's for ear pain. Cut an onion in half and then also put it next to the ear and wrap it with some gauze. You see why we need the gauze in our kit? Because we're going to need it from the kitchen as well. So those are things for ear pain. Constipation, olive oil is very good. Another thing is water. Drinking more water and moving more are things that we can do, but we do know that olive oil and water is in the kitchen. Those are things that we can use for constipation. Prunes, anything that has roughage, we know that as well. But again, it's important that we know what we have in our kitchen. I like what Alicia said. She did not want to go to an urgent care or somewhere because of her earache, but then she was able to get something from the kitchen. I'm going to say with peroxide may not have been in the kitchen, but it was in the home, and she was able to use it. So sometimes we don't need to rush to an emergency room right away. If we can try these things at home first, see if our body responds to it, and then there's sometimes we may need to move to the next level. Colds, if you have a cold, chives. I don't know if you knew that chives is like an expectorant. I love potatoes and chives. So I think of chives as being in my potatoes, not necessarily as an expectorant, but this is good to know because you can have chives, you can buy them fresh, you know, put them, make a tea. They recommend you make a tea, and that will help as an expectorant. So if you have a lot of mucus, a lot of cold, you can use chives for that reason. I think I have ear pain twice. That was not intended. If you have a foreign body in your eye, saline, try not to use regular water. If you have to, if that's all you have, use what you have. It'll be okay. But if the water's not filtered or something like that, you may be introducing things into your eye that you don't want in your eye. So you can buy those small bottles of saline from the store. Or, you know, so that you can have it on hand in the event something gets in your eye. You may be out working in the yard, you may be gardening. There is a lot of pollen in the air. Sometimes things will fly in your eye. If you know that, it's best to wear goggles when you can. I was outside cutting the grass the other day on my riding lawnmower, forgot to put my goggles on, and shortly thereafter, I knew there was things in the air. And so have saline so that you can rinse your eye out. Ear infections, another thing is garlic, and also for colon parasites. So garlic, the best kind is the fresh kind. The best is the fresh. The powder is okay if you want to season food, but if you're talking about as a something to help with healing, use the fresh garlic. And you can grate that and put it over your food or whatever. That will work. I don't know why I have earplanes sometimes. Mosquito bites, bee stings, baking soda. That's another thing that will help. You can make a little poultice, put a little water on it, put it on your skin, and that will help. You need to do it for a couple of days because usually those mosquito bites, especially if they really bit you, you want to do that. And So parsley, I don't know if you knew this about parsley, but parsley is good for kidney stones. It will lower your blood pressure and your heart rate. So don't overdo the parsley when you're cooking or using it in seasonings, because it may drop your blood pressure or your heart rate very low. Good for fresh breath. It can help with excreting toxins. It's almost like it is a diuretic. It is a diuretic. So if you eat some of it and you find that you're going to the restroom a lot, parsley will do that. It will also stimulate your appetite. If you have stomach cramps or nausea, parsley is good for that. My mom used to use parsley in her potato salad, many different things for seasoning, and it's really okay. But if you have any of these other conditions that you're wanting to use something from nature, parsley is one of those things that you can consider. All right, so there's times, those were those minor bumps, scrapes that may happen at home, in the garden, outside. But there's times that you need to call 911. And these are the times that you need to call 911 and not second guess yourself. So when in doubt, call 911. These are the times that you should call them. If you have chest pain, do not minimize it. Do not say it's indigestion. Do not try to figure it out. Call 911. If you're having difficulty breathing, your respiratory system is closing down on you and you don't know why is that happening, you need medical attention immediately. If you have difficulty speaking, unless you're dehydrated, you need to go to 911. But if someone is speaking to you clearly one moment and then the next moment they're garble, you can understand them, they seem to be incoherent, you need to call 911 and not ask, should I be calling 911? Do it right away.
Yep.
If someone breaks out in a cold sweat, they're sitting there and all of a sudden they just break out in a cold sweat, call 911, because many things could be happening. Blood sugar could be dropping, they could be having a stroke, anything could be happening. And while we're trying to figure it out, we have lost time. If they have a severe headache, one that they've never had before, in the back of the head, in the front of the head, on the side of the head, they say, oh, this is the worst headache I've ever had, you call 911. If they say don't call 911, you call 911. What I always say to people is, you will not have what they need for them to treat them medically. Do not put them in your car while you're driving and they may pass out in the passenger seat. It is important that you recognize that these are true emergencies. If they're walking 1 minute and they're weak the next minute and they're down on the ground the next minute, you need to have them seek medical attention immediately. If they have hiccups that they cannot get rid of, you've tried everything. You've held the nose, you drank the water, you say, where's the hiccup? And you think it's going to go away. And it doesn't go away. They need to go to the hospital. I learned that hiccups, particularly in women, for any extended period of time, could be a precursor of a stroke. Didn't know that, but now I know that. So I tell everybody about hiccups. The other thing is coughing. If you begin to cough, and nothing's caught in your throat, but you're coughing and you can't control it, I also learned that could be a sign that a heart attack is coming on, because your body's trying to get oxygen. That's why you're coughing, trying to get oxygen to the heart. And so you don't ever want to minimize a changing condition that is not normal for them. If they're confused, and they look confused and they're acting confused, that could be a sign of something going on that you don't know, I don't know, but you want to seek medical attention. And if they're unable to stay awake, if they're very sleepy, you're trying to speak to them and they can't continue the conversation. That happened to me a couple of months ago. I was talking to a friend of mine and I felt they should be fully awake. But every time I said, are you awake? I had to keep on saying that, only to find out a couple of days later they had COVID. They could not even control that they were so sleepy. So again, it's important for us not to minimize these things. These are true medical emergencies. So there's promises for healing. So we talked about the minor, we talked about the major things that can happen. And we have to believe that if something major happens in our lives, that God promises that he can heal us. And so there's going to be times that we may end up in the hospital from all those things that I just talked about. You've called 911 and now you spend a couple of days in the hospital. That's very possible, but there are promises of healing that I want to share with you. So when I wrote From Hurt to Healing, I was thinking, just from a scrape and a bump, Sometimes we have to have major healing, whether sometimes people end up in the hospital, they end up having a triple bypass, right? Or they may end up having had a stroke. Many things can happen, but if we can do natural remedies when we can at home for the bumps and scrapes, to the hospital when they need to go, but use our scriptures and our self-talk to help us through these situations. So I love this. Heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. So even if we go to the hospital for a medical emergency, these are promises that we can call on the Lord for. So, there's a verse in Psalms, text in Psalms 30, verse 2. It says, "O Lord, my God, I cried out to you and you healed me." We need to begin to pray for healing when we're not feeling well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, or relationally. Sometimes it's not just the scrapes and bumps on the outside. Sometimes people are hurting internally on the inside emotionally. Sometimes they're hurting on the inside spiritually. They feel like they're far from God. They want to be close to God, but they're not sure why they're not. And then sometimes people need financial healing. They're so broken because of maybe their finances are not where they want to be. And so sometimes, even though we don't have the external scrapes and bumps, internally, the way we're feeling can affect us as well. And then relationally, because sometimes there's strained relationships with husband and wife, parents and children, co-workers, all of that. And so here's some more Bible texts that can help us through those times when we are feeling like we need God to help us to heal us. That's his first aid kit. It's his scriptures in the Bible. And here are some of them that we should also have in our first aid kit to help to heal us. I am the Lord who heals you financially, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, physically. We can claim that promise from Exodus 15:26. Jeremiah 30:17, "But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." Aren't these wonderful promises from God? This is his first aid kit for us. So maybe we don't have a scrape or a bump or a swelling or a headache or an earache, but internally he wants to heal us from the inside out. He's going to restore us to health and heal our wounds. Another one from James 5:14. "Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord." That's from James 5:14. So sometimes when we're crying out to God, there's sometimes we may not feel like it, but we can call on the elders. We can call on our friends. We can call on people who know the Lord to intercede for us, to pray for us, and even to anoint us if we need to be anointed. We've heard of people who have been anointed with oil while they were sick, but God can anoint us even now. We don't have to be on our deathbed to be anointed by God. There is a verse in the Bible, it's in Psalms, and I meant to have exactly where it's from, but it says, "Anoint me with fresh oil every day. Anoint me with fresh oil so that I may flourish and produce good fruit." So every day we can ask God to anoint us so that we will be productive, that we will make right decisions as it relates to our health and our well-being. But this is God's first aid kit for us. He will heal. We can cry out to him. We can call on the elders of the church to pray for us. So what we've learned today is we need to plan for injuries and emergencies. They are going to happen. We need a first aid kit with the traditional items, the scissors, the tweezers, the gauze, alcohol, peroxide, saline, all of that. We also know that we need the natural items in our kitchen. And I would encourage you to go out and get as many of those things that you can so you can have them on hand, because in that way you don't have to incur that expense at the last moment. But we've heard about the onion. We've heard about the basil. We've heard about the honey and the egg yolk. We've heard about the peroxide. We've heard about those things that we can have as natural items from our kitchen that can be part of our first aid kit. The third thing we learned is protect your health by seeking medical assistance when indicated. I can't stress enough about rationalizing. If someone says, don't call 911, you probably should be calling 911. I had a friend a couple of years ago, went into the hospital, had been discharged to home. And her sister was with her caring for her when she first got home from the hospital. And she became very sick and she became septic. And I don't know if you know what septic is, but septic means you have bacteria in your blood that's going through every organ of your body. If you don't get treatment within 3 hours, you can die that quick. And my friend, the sick friend, was saying, don't call 911, don't call 911. She didn't realize how sick she was. And her sister stepped outside and called 911 anyway. And it's a good thing that she did, because had she not, my dear friend would have lost her life right there in her home. And so sometimes people are begging you not to call because they don't want the ambulance expense. They don't want, the doctor's expense or the hospital expense. But I tell you, let's try to live well. Let's try to live well. That bill will get figured out, and if it doesn't get paid, it don't get paid. But there's work that God has for us to do, and we have to stay well. That's what our goal is, to stay well, live well, and stay well. So again, if you have a family member, care enough about them to call 911, care enough about them to have a kit in your home so that you can treat injuries quickly. So if you have a first aid kit or a box, anything, even if you have these herbs and stuff that we talked about in your kitchen, make sure you keep them stocked, because you know how we use things and then it goes away and then we go to look for it, it's not there. Check expiration dates, whether you're using any type of seasoning, type of garlic, any type of basil or parsley, especially if it's not fresh. Fresh is always the best, but if it's not fresh and is in a bottle, make sure you check the expiration dates. You want to use natural products for healing as much as possible. Try to minimize the use of the pills. Like we talked about, cayenne is good to increase your blood flow. In the hospital, they used to give people an aspirin if they were having chest pain. But if you know that cayenne will work, then that is an option that you can use. There's poultices that you can use. As I mentioned, honey, we talked about the egg whites, cabbage leaves on the leg. So those are things that you can use, natural products, and then seek medical attention and call 911. Lastly, trusting God for healing. Because there's sometimes that our wounds, whether it's external or internal, are so deep that only God can heal. But I gave you some promises in the Bible. I gave you promises in the Bible that I hope that we will all take away with us about God's promise for healing. External healing, physically, emotional, spiritual, financial, relational, all of those scriptures. And there's many more in the Bible that God promises for healing. So we're going to pause and see if anyone has any questions. Any questions? Feel free to open your mic. Any other?
This morning at church here in Apopka, we had communion service.
Okay.
We're talking about from the cross to the tomb to eternity. And then they gave us a little bag with some goodies. And in that bag, it has the Bible promise book. 1,000 promises from God's words. And as we were talking, I went to look for healing, but it wasn't healing, it was sickness. And a lot of those scriptures that you talked about, they're right there in this book. Yeah, so I have a good book. Each family got a bag with all the goodies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's good that you have it at your fingertips, because when we're going through difficult times, I don't know about you, but there's times that you're trying to bring up promises, like as you're trying to get through it. But if you have a book, you can quickly go look in that book under sickness or whatever it is, and it can help with calming our spirit, bringing peace over us. So yes, I would encourage everyone, find something, write down the promises of God, put them throughout your house. If you were to visit my home, almost in every room, there is a something visual with the Bible text in it, just to, to keep your mind focused on God, because, we need to do that. Any other thoughts, any other remedies that I may have missed?
This is Bernice. And I am enjoying the discussion today, and I am familiar with some of those kitchen first aid, but some of them I did not know about. So I appreciate the information that you have shared. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Mrs. Edwards is a dear friend of mine. Thank you for joining us today. You know, the one thing that I forgot to mention was salt. I didn't mention salt. You know, I was talking about Epsom salt and all of that for soaking, for soreness and things like that. That's very good. If you need to, for healing and pulling out muscle pain. You know, the other thing is when I fell on my wrist, you know, the thing that brought me the most comfort and took away the pain was water. Water, I just would run my wrist under the water, under warm water, and it would take the pain away immediately. And I didn't even, because I was wrapping my wrist with warm compresses, but I don't know, God led me to put my wrist under the running water, and it literally took the pain away. I mean, it would come back later, but you know, it was a quick, immediate relief. So water's good. Water's good.
I think that adding heat to pain, I don't know if that this is my opinion, is a good idea. Maybe you want something opposite of the pain that would kind of soothe. So I don't know, but water is always good. Water is good for a lot of things.
It took away.
And you were talking about the salt, but the salt that comes to mind is the sea salt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that it is said that sea salt is good for high blood pressure.
Mm. Oh.
It doesn't make the pressure high. It actually controls it. The Celtic sea salt, the Himalayan salt, but the regular table salt is the one that does the damage. But the sea salt helps.
I think Alicia, you told me that earlier this week or last week when I talked.
Recently, I changed my salt from the natural white table salt to Himalayan pink salt.
Yeah.
Because I had read where it helps you control your high blood pressure. So by me now going to the clinic, every time I go to the clinic, my pressure always, I don't know if it's because the fear of the results that I would get or what, but the doctor said to me, even if the pressure go up a little, it would not go up that high, right? Sometimes 187 over 97, some kind of numbers I don't even want to repeat for a little year. But thank God for Jesus. Anyhow, so I decide now that I would try the Himalayan salt, and it is working.
Right.
It is working. The last 2 times I went to my clinic, my blood pressure was good. Good. When my INR was not good for the last testing, which was a couple of weeks ago, my blood pressure was good.
Perfect.
And that is because I believe I just stopped using. I tell them, I say, I don't want any other salt more than the Himalayan pink salt to use in my kitchen.
You can find that Himalayan pink salt in different places. I've seen it around. Any other remedies that I forgot? This is good. I love learning from other people. This is great. So next week, our topic is going to be by irritable bowel syndrome. And Miss Josephine Johnson is going to bring us that. But before we close out, I want to ask if there's any prayer request. I'm actually going to stop the video for just a moment and we'll do our prayer request. I want to just thank you all for coming to Living Well today. What we've talked about is nature's first aid kit from the kitchen. And we've learned a lot of things today about what's in our kitchen already that we should have as a first aid kit. And I would suggest that you put those items in a kind of like a designated cabinet, even if you're used from that, but then you'll know when you're out of that item and then you can go ahead and replace that item. But again, if we can use natural, is always the best. But I would say if it's more than a minor injury and a major injury, make sure you seek medical attention. So I want to say thank you for joining Living Well today. We're going to stop the recording as we go do our prayer requests.